Welcome to our weekly panel series here at the Iowa City Public Library. I'm very grateful to Susan Craig and her staff for making this space available to the International Writing Program, and to Downing Thomas, Dean of International Programs, who provides the pizza and the drinks in the back. For those of you watching at home, fuller biographies of all of the writers, as well as samples of their writings and a schedule for the entire fall residency of the 2018 International Writing Program, is available on our website at iwp.uiowa.edu. Our writers today who will be speaking are, from left to right, Haifa al-Nadi, who's a professor of English in Amman, Jordan. Her widely awarded writing courses crosses many genres. She's the author of screenplays and magazine articles, and two collections of stories on the threshold of dreaming and propositions. Her research areas extend into social issues, music and film studies, as well as international literature. She participates this fall courtesy of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. State Department. Seated next to her is Usman Ali of Pakistan, who believes that theater initiates important conversations within and about society. He founded the only theater in the city of Mandi Bahudin at the University of Sargodha, and from this base he has been a pioneer in English language theater in his country. His plays include The Prisoners, excerpts of which we heard last night in Global Express, and more from which we will hear, I think, on October 27th. It looks like we'll have a staged reading of the full play. Other plays include The Guilt, The Last Metaphor, The Odyssey, The Breath, and The Flute, three of which have upcoming runs at the Royal Court Theatre in London. He participates courtesy of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. State Department. Seated next to Usman is Jacqueline Goldberg of Venezuela. She's the author of 6 books of prose, 10 children's books, and 20 volumes of poetry. She's lazy, as you can tell. She's won several awards for her children's books and writings on gastronomy, and her novel, The Clear Hours, received in 2012 the prize of the Fundación para la Cultura Urbana, which was the Venezuelan Booksellers' Book of the Year. And this year was re-edited for international release. She is passionate about the Jewish community in her country, which was the subject of the excerpts from her play that was staged last night in Global Express. And she is a frequent speaker at literature and food festivals. Her participation in the fall residency is made possible by the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. And finally, to her left is Aram, Pachyan, an influential fiction writer and essayist from Armenia. He's the author of the story collections Robinson and Ocean and the novel Goodbye Bird, which has been translated into 6 languages, including English, and was staged at the Armenian Center for Contemporary Experimental Art. Using magical realism to illustrate the ways emotion can shape memory and the intersections of art and identity, his work has inspired plays and chamber music compositions, and his stories have earned the Presidential Prize. He is here courtesy of the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Walt Whitman said that the decay of the body is the poet's only subject. Feeling I experienced anew when I woke this morning, aching in just about every part of my body. And since our bodies inevitably affect how we navigate the world, it is important to ask, how much power do its various aspects, physical, ability, gender, race, have over an artist's work? How do writers navigate these issues for themselves and or their fictional characters? To prepare for this panel, I reread Anna Schwier's Happy as a Dog's Tale, which Czesław Miłosz translated from Polish into English with Leonard Nathan. Miłosz opens his introduction with another question. What is the central theme of these poems? Answer, flesh. Flesh in love ecstasy, flesh in pain, flesh in terror, flesh afraid of loneliness, exuberant, running, lazy, flesh of women giving birth, resting, snoring, doing her morning calisthenics, feeling the flow of time or reducing time to one instant. By such a clear delineation of her subject matter, Anna Schweer achieves in her sensual and one could say fierce poetry a nearly calligraphic neatness. And I thought I would launch this talk today with one of my favorite poems by Anna Schweer. It's called, I Say to My Body, You Carcass. I say to my body, you carcass. I say, you carcass, crated, nailed down, deaf and blind like a padlock. I should beat you till you scream, starve you for 40 days, hang you over the highest abyss of the world. Perhaps then a window in you would open on everything I feel exists, on everything that is closed to me. I say to my body, you carcass, you are afraid of pain and hunger, you are afraid of the abyss, you deaf, blind carcass, I say and spit in the mirror. And with that, let us begin.
Hello, everyone. Is this on? Okay. I'd like to stand over there. First of all, thank you so much for having me today. I did not choose a title, so it's the same, On the Body. Yeah, of course.
We're passing out the index cards with pencils. Write your questions down, and when we've heard from all the writers, we will launch the questions to the panel. Sorry about that.
Okay. On the body. Once upon a time, there was a little girl. Well, this is not going to be a story before you sleep. Once upon a time, there was a little girl, a teenager. She was the youngest, the most fragile, and the only invisible child in her family. One day, she got strangely sick, and she had to stay home. She was afraid, and her fear seemed to synchronize with her sickness. Her mom was out to the grocery store, so the girl spent almost 2 hours waiting for her to come home. As she waited, she wondered what she was going to do about the thick black blood gushing out of her body, drowning her underwear. Those 2 miserable, confused, painful hours seemed like a century. She could not sit, she could not move. The moment she realized that the blood was not only black, she tried to use tissues to scrub out the varied shades of red. She realized that red can come in different colors, and that she was no longer the same child anymore. She, the girl in red, was older now. You are a big girl now, she was told by the authorities at school, where she used to sing. Big girls are not allowed to sing in public in front of men. She was forced to quit. While she was being silenced by force, her body did not stop growing, speaking in its own way. It felt like she was growing up in the body of a stranger, a bigger breasted body she could not recognize or make friends with. Being in a conservative school made things harder. Hiding in loose clothes seemed to be the simplest, quietest solution for the shame and embarrassment that had somehow become the truth she lived. That long period of silence was about to break. Her body was looking for a medium to embody. In search of this medium, she began her journey of reading in both Arabic and English. She read almost every single book in the school library. Then, after a period of charging herself with the energy of the printed word, followed by adequate think time, a spark deep inside of her was lit, and she started writing. Writing for her became a ladder. Each rung of the ladder became a realization of, rather than a solution for, the problems created by her growing body. Her body, formerly an obstacle she could not overcome, blossomed through writing, and became synonymous with the inner strength that would pave the way for her second book of short stories entitled Propositions. The following is an excerpt from a story in Propositions entitled Bodies. She believed that he liked the bodies of strong women, such as Diana Krall. She sensed this the minute he sent her a link to one of Diana Krall's songs. Her many curves aroused his desires. She was utterly white, utterly blonde, with compact, luscious lips. Her green eyes were the color of his tie. 2 bob whites lived in her breasts. They never stopped singing. Her hair was loose and flowing. A fine figure she had, replete with expression. Her arms were intimate with the emergence of light coming from his eyes when he recalled the beauty of women's bodies he once saw in a picture one of his girlfriends emailed. They were a group of naked women whose exposed breasts had the letters of the word freedom written on them. He was allured by the word and how it was written more than the nudity itself. That's exactly what he wanted to convince her of, that he wasn't at all interested in the nude bodies he saw. She tried to inveigle him mischievously so he would describe for her all the details he saw in the bodies in that picture. She wanted to know about the kind of curves he liked and those he didn't, because his comments about the picture and his extreme admiration of the naked bodies in it irritated her. She became absent-minded as she followed the sparkling light in his eyes every time he repeated, "Bodies, bodies," with seductive intent. Surely, he did not literally mean to seduce her, though he often admitted to his non-purity of intention. When she returned home, she flew to her room, locked the door, turned on her laptop, and Googled Diana Krall's pictures. If you would like to know what will happen in that story, you should attend my reading at the Prairie Lights on the 14th of October. This girl's state of being transformed into a sense of becoming. Writing made her balanced. Now, she often writes women who long for the child inside, women who want to glow, thrive, and be transcendent. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who grew up to become the woman you see today, the woman whose truth has moved beyond being ashamed or embarrassed about her body. Thank you very much.
And before Usman starts, I just want to say it turns out we're not passing out index cards, so assemble your questions in your head, and Lee will wander around with the microphones afterwards. Usman?
चलो बाज़ार मुस्तफ़ा को चलते हैं, खोटे सिक्के सिर्फ वहीं पर चलते हैं. अली इमाम मनस्तो मनम गुलाम अली हैदरियम कलंदरम मस्तम बंदा मुर्तज़ा अली हस्तम. Well, I dedicate my reading to my beloved teacher, Professor Shaista Sirajuddin, who is my heart and who is everything for me. Thank you so much for here. Before I start reading my paper, I want to show you a few pictures, but I cannot find Lee Mouse here. Yes, so I think those pictures would provide an important context to understand how the body influences. Oh, thank you. Well, this is the picture of Ali's theater. We stage performances at night time, and this is the performance of the Guild. And this is the performance of the last metaphor, in which I myself acted. Third. Well, now let me start reading my paper. The role of the human body in my dramatic art. In a world where word defines truth, where politicians entertain people with slogans, where media deceives people with lies. In this world, we need Hamlet with his mousetrap. Every good play should be a mousetrap, and every playwright, Hamlet. The playwright of Ali's theater, my theater in Pakistan, writes plays as physical mousetraps to catch the conscience of the audience. The human body functions as the spring of this mousetrap by drawing attention to what it means to be a human being. In my play, The Last Metaphor, tales of violence and companionship are fused and set against the beauty of a Pakistani winter, replete with crows, cobras, and fireflies. In this play, as shown in the production photos behind me, the stage itself is recreated as a living body, a fire, a pit of coals located center stage. This cracked stage is the space for its fractured characters. The door opens and the protagonist, Jugnu, Firefly, enters carrying a dead body on his back. He walks menacingly towards the second character. He walks menacingly towards the audience, places the body downstage, sits on the stool and begins to smoke. Whose body is it? Banka, the second character, enters with a rope in his hand. He throws the rope downstage and winds it around his arm. No word has been spoken yet. The stage is already awakened before the dialogue begins, and the characters are defined by their physical actions, not by their words. In Ali's theater, characters express themselves through their gestures and non-verbal movements, and these bodily actions are more important than what they say on stage. Jugnu's menacing movement towards the body evokes the engagement of one body with another. He continues to tend to its wounds and sprinkle incense over it. He knows whose body is it. He doesn't speak about it. He's seen moving towards the body and away from it. Banka is a mechanic by profession and repairs the motors in the wells. His fathers and brothers died in a well because the rope broke. The physical rope links him to his brother and father. Thus, one character is associated with the body and the other with the rope. The stage will not let them rest. Whenever there is a knock on the door, both characters get scared. They rush to the door, thinking it is the police outside. No one is there ever. The play ends with a final knock. A dog enters. The dog knows that the body lying on stage is that of another dog who was crushed by a van. Both were friends. The dog kisses the feet of Jugnu, who has been trying to bury the dead dog for respecting the body of his friend. The range of physical actions, running towards the door, throwing logs into the pit of fire, preparing and drinking coffee, dressing the wounds of dead body, throwing stage items into the pit, smoking cigarettes, smearing body with coal are important visceral movements associated with the body, which make the play primarily physical rather than oral. When language is filtered through this dramatic ambience, it acquires physical texture. The words come out of the mouth of characters like perspiration comes out of the body. Each word, rooted in the soles of the feet of actors, goes straight into the pores of the audience to catch their conscience. This language becomes action, plague, invasion. It becomes immediate, direct, raw, visual. It becomes clarity, focus, ritual, movement, gesture. It becomes healing and humane. This theatrical language allows the artist to have profound inquiring engagement with society. To this artist, playwriting is like witnessing a house on fire. You have to shout, fire, 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 until the people in the house come out. Let's look at the visceral and botanical language in one of Jugnu's monologues, which I will perform. Jugnu, 7 o'clock, a stench was coming from the market, the sound of cats and crickets. 5 policemen dragged an innocent boy. Ponds sounded with frogs and walls reverberated with crickets. One slapped him and the other spat on him. The rest asked the boy to say aloud, "May all the drug addicts be damned." One boy said the line, but the other remained silent. The other was being slapped. The road was littered with empty bottles and dung. They made them stand in the van. The van drove slowly for all the people to watch the boys. The van stopped and a man from the crowd climbed the van and spat on the boys. One crow was sitting on the electric cable above the crowd. Their necks were tied. The van was a blue color. One light was broken. The road was untarred. A heap of trash was set on fire. The dust supported the policemen. Shops were open all around. People had to come out to watch the show. A cheap theater without tickets and curtains. The first act, the shirt is taken off. The second act, the hands are tied. The third act, they're slapped. The fourth act, spit. The fifth act, the slap. In the end, the audience claps. No panic in the eyes of one boy. Resignation, not submission. Acceptance, not protest. Vendors surrounded the theater. The crow flew from the cable. Caw, 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 caw. The second boy was shivering. One was looking up, the other looking down. The sky was full of stars, light in the sky. The moon was complete. One boy had a mole at the bottom of the neck. The other boy had a white line on his wrist. One wore the red shirt, the other a black one. Their trousers were of the same color. One had red trousers and the other had red trousers. Caw, 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 caw. The crow was yelling. Thank you.
Hello? Okay, thank you. I prefer to read here, see, because I am small and you can't view me. The writing from the tremor. I became a writer at a very young age, following the dictate of my body. Today, I keep on writing because my body demands one portion of reality, another of words and silence. The tremors of my hands led me to writing. At first, to escape from the bullying I suffered by my classmates in school, to make my loneliness bearable. Then I understood that writing was the passageway to the other borders, which allowed me to speak for myself beyond the disability that still today prevents a cup of tea from following a straight path to my lips, a pencil for tracing gentle figures, a sheet of paper from being calmly held in these hands. Shaking has always been the most willful of my unwillingnesses. I am a writer at will because I tremble, because my body unwillingly shakes. Someone told me once that the day I write about my tremor will be the day I'll stop shaking. It was a joke, not a promise. Of course, I wrote a book about my tremor, The Room of Tremors, and here I am, still shaking. Let me tell you the story about my tremor, which is the story of a writing body, a body that shakes, a body that shakes and writes. I was 4 years old when it appeared. My parents were the first ones to notice. We were gathered around the kitchen table. It was enormous. It had horns, scales, wings, claws, a tail, a big nose, a hump. It howled, it barked, it purred. We tried to get back. we couldn't. From the moment Cantor's neurological test started, we went on many trips seeking the reasons for my tremor. All encephalographic scans, X-ray scans, blood tests, scrutinizing looks, always turned out to appear normal. Normal. That was the tragedy. We were hoping for a harsh remark, an anomaly, a pit, an end. Not only did they take me to see doctors, but also to a man at the border who prescribed plants, to a Chinese doctor who filled my bag with needles, to a fortune teller. So many trips, so many small trips to my body. Writing was the hardest part of my condition. My handwriting is ugly, zigzagging, almost indecipherable. I spent numerous hours on handwriting a page, a text that, for others, would only be a matter of minutes. It happens the same with bureaucratic forms. My handwriting is the identity of the tremor, and it is always my handwriting which arouses suspicion. For that reason, at age 7, I was already typing on the Olivetti typewriting that my parents had in their optical stores. After that, I worked on a typewriter which would become mine, placed in the center of a room of one's own. Only 20 years have passed since my tremor acquired a proper name, myoclonic dystonia. It is supposedly a congenital disease, not a degenerative one. It is a rare minority condition, one without a rear view mirror, or an orphan disease. I say this with no certainty because I have not been able yet to get tested for it. I didn't see myself becoming a flower bander because I tremble. I didn't dream of being a watchmaker because I tremble. I did become a writer precisely because I tremble. Susan Sontag says in illness as metaphor that everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and in the kingdom of the sick. Tremors provokes this. Every few seconds I switch from living in one kingdom to living in the other. Our body is the epicenter of vigorous metaphors, the place where language shakes, where its pleasure and its power lie. Our body is in itself a shaking text. Our body leads to writing, and each body writes what it can. Our body demands a syntax to place some order in the world, to avoid becoming completely astray in it. If my body didn't shake, I wouldn't need the stroke of writing lightning. If I didn't have a trembled body, the world would be imperfect and illegible. If I didn't tremble, I wouldn't be here in front of you in Iowa, speaking on this panel, shaking, shaking, shaking. Thank you.
Hello. Well, on the body. patriarchal societies, the body has a special role and meaning. When I was a teenager, boys with tiny and weak bodies had it rough. It seems that their fragility and physical weakness was attracting violence. The physical attributes of a real man included a short and round body, a fat neck, muscular arms and legs, and a certain shape of a belly that's hard to describe. In addition, a face that conveyed anger and aggression. When growing up, most of the boys were trying to force their bodies to meet these standards. For a lot of them, it wasn't so much about being a real man, as it was about making their lives easier in a brutal and violent world that was trying to impose masculinity on them. For a long time, I thought of my body as an enemy, a treat, a trap for pleasure and tragedy. My father was a surgeon. The language of surgeon is also the language of the body. The surgery is performed throughout the body and is aimed at protecting the body, yet it is also a kind of criminal act, aimed at exposing a hidden reality. Surgery entails crossing the boundaries of the body. In a way, it is a rebellion, an assault, a transgression towards the sacred borders of the body. On the weekends, my father used to take me with him to the hospital. Walking from one patient to another, I felt growing elation towards my own body. I kept repeating to myself, I don't want to have a body. There is nothing worse than having a body. It is interesting that I always thought of it in the third person. It, my body, was always someone else. It occurred to me later in life that this sense of alienation was essentially something physiological, perhaps a result of some complicated and contradictory activity of the neurons. My sense of the unreliability of my own body reached its peak during my military service. Bullying in the army was quite normal. Patriarchal rules and traditions had penetrated the army, and every soldier followed them. Rejecting these traditions or breaking the rules that were passed through generation meant jeopardizing your body, your health, and ultimately your life. In the army, there were so-called dirty territories, zones that were under a taboo. Dirty territories included toilets, sinks, even groves, benches, or an area of a field. Nobody was allowed to sit or lay down in these territories. If you dropped something there, you weren't allowed to pick it up. If a soldier broke the internal rule, even accidentally, and was discovered, the lawbreaker was isolated from the squad. Nobody was allowed to touch him. He was disgraced and his body was desecrated. For the other soldiers, his body became the dirty territory. In my first novel, one of the narrators who breaks this taboo by accident pays for it with his life. Nevertheless, he believes that he is still alive, that he has finished his service and has returned home. So what if your body was desecrated and destroyed? That doesn't mean you don't have the right to live on. This was the core idea of my novel. Objectively, it is not possible to continue life without the body. Through politics, through laws, it is still possible to reduce vicious behavior in the army, in society. However, politics and laws only work within the framework of life. They cannot revive the dead body. Nevertheless, I found a way to revive the dead body. It was through writing. I heard my father exclaim many times, "The wound is healing, the patient will live." While writing my novel, I had the same feeling. The paragraph is getting better. I can hear the narrator's voice. His life continues. If that I have spoken about today sounds a bit naive, I'm not ashamed. Naivety is often considered a flaw, but there are times when such flaws are empowering. Thank you.
Thank you all. What a fabulous set of presentations. Just a reminder that copies of these presentations can be found at the IWP website, along with copies of the videos. And while you're assembling your questions, let me remind you about some upcoming events. This evening, the Shambai House reading at 5 o'clock will feature two Sinophone poets, and translator Stephen Bradbury will be here to read with them and to introduce them. Sunday at Prairie Lights, we continue with our readings with Lisa Ganieva from Russia and Rasha Kayet from Germany, who will be joined by Keenan Walsh, a postgraduate visiting writer. And later on Sunday evening, the IWP will host our ongoing international film series, Cinema Tech. Sunday's film, The Reenactment, will be presented by the Romanian poet and writer Dan Koman. So, Lee has the microphone. Questions from the audience? And let's try to make them questions and not just statements, okay?
Hear me?
Yeah.
My question is, it's an international question. To whom does the body belong? To the individual or to the state? And does democracy make any difference? Are you a citizen or are you a subject? So this is a question that's constantly asked because we're having a problem here in the United States about abortion. Whose body is this to talk about abortion?
So who wants to take that on? Whose body, who owns the body?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I think, body is really, I always take body as a porous. Porous, that body has its own pores. Body also absorbs the experience, whatever happens around. And we continue to claim that it's our body, but your body is subjected to all the ideologies, to all the speeches which are delivered, and all these talks about the human rights. They talk about human dignity and dignity of the human body. And time and again we hear, these claims to respect the human body, but unfortunately it is not there. So my position about this body is, perhaps, body is a wound itself, I feel. It's a wound because it's a burden on you, because it's not accepted. But I think the same wound is a privilege also. It can also provide light to you to write words. On the one side, body could be a burden, but I think on the other side, this body also can help you to write something. The body is a complete text. The body itself becomes the muse. The Greeks always founded their muses in the Greek mountain. But the way I approach body, that it really can serve as a muse also. So instead of being silent about the body, we should allow the body to convey itself, to speak itself. Unless or until we give a context to the body, I think body doesn't find the meaning. So perhaps the right way to respond to all this all these ideologies, all these approaches about the body, perhaps we should allow our own body to say itself, whether it is a poetry, it's a novel, it's a remark, whatever the way, I think we should allow body to say something so that everybody could be respected.
Do others want to reply, respond? No?
It's difficult, or no, but I think my body belongs to me, but it's a naive, I think. It's a very, very difficult question. Sorry.
Okay. Other questions?
So I'll just put the context before I ask the question. So essentially we're wraps, right? The body is a wrap, and skin is the largest organ of our body. we're paying attention to the largest organ, but it's a wrapper. We don't know what's inside. How do you look at writing as unveiling or opening that veil of a wrap that we are? Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to answer, or should I answer your question? Well, I think, skin, well, as often it is in post-colonial literature, skin is often a cage, in which we are all hidden. And the way I take is, and there's a beautiful book also, Black Skin, White Mask by Fano. That is also a very good book which can really help you to understand this. However, the way I take is the skin, skin, yes, it allows the artist to unveil what is inside the skin. It is very true. And why I take the skin? For me, although the skin and what is inside it, how you can reveal, I pick the human emotion, that humanity is present within every skin. I don't write Pakistani plays. I don't write plays of East or the West. They're human plays. And every human being has a skin. And there is humanity inside every skin. And I think the primary job of a writer is to unveil the skin in such a way that others should be respected. I'm just reminded of a line which Shylock says, "If you hurt us, should we not bleed?" And Merchant of the Venice. So I feel we are living in a mad world, as Edward Bond often puts it. So if we want to do something about it, perhaps we should use the skin in order to unveil the humanity which lives within everyone, whether someone is bad or someone is a good person. So perhaps this humanity should be acknowledged. And I think through skin, you can use skin as a metaphor, you can use skin as a symbol in order to restore the human dignity, which I'm so sorry is almost lost in the contemporary world.
Haifa, do you want to take that question?
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree with you, Ali. The body is a medium that writers in particular who are interested, in that field in particular, it's actually a way of expression, just like what I'm doing right now. Through writing, we manage to uncover what is hidden inside. It's really, it's really a hard question. I need to think about it.
No, you're right. And your point also takes me to another point. In my work, I filter language through human body. What do I mean by filtration? So that it is not the language which you hear on electronic media. It is not the language which you hear on social media. It is a language which is very, very sensuous. It's a language which is embedded with the physical texture. So I think that I'm using the same skin to convey the story as well as to create a new form of language so that the language also appears to be very much humane. It is often quite common in the contemporary world. For example, Walcott comes to my mind. In Walcott, language is filtered through the landscape. Every writer indigenizes language by filtering it into his own land. But I think that human body is something, the skin, which everyone who's born in this world possesses. So I try my best to filter language or to impart language, that physical texture, so that my language could speak to the body. There's a beautiful play by Lorca, The Blood Wedding, and in which the mother, says beautifully that I remember my lost husband with the soles of my feet. And whenever you hear these images related to body, I think it's very much a trope also, and it's a technique also to pay attention to someone who's a human being, perhaps. I think it's a very important technique also.
So this question is to the panel, anyone who, how do you feel about writing about being a prisoner in your own body? Basically, true sickness or true color of the skin, just anything. But you're a prisoner, you feel like you're a prisoner within your body.
I wonder if Jacqueline might take that one on.
I know. Yes, it is the common belief that we are prisoners in our body, but in our body that make relation with the collective, with the society. Inside us, we don't have this prison. We are free, and to write, we write about the body that is free, and this is connect about with that the other answer that the society makes prisons with every kind of thing. And the cultural prison, religious prisons that made to expose that we are in fight with the society and with ourselves. Yeah.
I might add, Jacqueline, it seemed to me that in your very beautiful presentation, you forced us to think anew about the whole meaning or the prison of what is normal. Seeking at an early age, you and your parents, an answer for what it is that causes the trembling. And I was struck by your use of the word normal, and I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yes, in this moment, to me, all is normal. My tremble is the normal thing of my life. But it's difficult to explain to the society that I tremble. Somebody looks me in the restaurants and asks me what happened to me. And it's normal with all disease, with all incapacity. I have a disease, but someone have the blue hair. It's the same. It's the same. Everybody watch, everybody answer, everybody take her place for opinion. That's
One line I would like to add to Goldberg. Yes, body is a prison, but this is a prison which gives you opportunities. It teaches you how to get free also.
Armin, do you want to add?
In patriarchal society, it's very difficult for body because you need every time you need to revive, keep on and revive your body, and then after then, if you have a chance, you can write about that situation. But yeah, it's very brutal societies and. You need time to think about that reason, that result. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, there are no stories without bodies, right?
Can you hold till we get the mic so it
Oh,
gets...
sure.
Yeah.
There are no stories without bodies, in a way. And my question is more personal. If you have any rituals, if you have any, what is your relationship of your body to your own writing? Do you follow? Do you need more description than that?
These are pre-writing rituals or rituals while
Anything around, like, what do you notice with your body and your writing, as far as, not with your mind, but your body and your writing?
Should I answer?
Yeah.
How do I write? That will give you an idea how my body becomes the muse for me. I do some physical exercises before writing a scene. I set a loud favorite music which I have. I use a standing desk. I never write by sitting on a chair. So yes, I use that standing desk. And I have cuffs like this, as if I'm going to engage in some kind of a battle. And interestingly, this is a battle with the ideas. You know, Ted Hughes said that writing a poem is like capturing an animal. You know, and for me, the writing is very much like capturing the story and the images. So I do exercises, I warm, and I don't write with the fan on. I switch off the fan, and in Pakistan, it is a very hot season. I'm talking about in summer. I don't use air conditioners at all. So when I perspire myself, and it is that time when I begin to write, and inspiration comes.
You reminded me of an incident that happened with me when I first began writing my second book, Propositions. I remember that I was driving, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not really sure, all traffic lights were green. And the idea just struck me. I wanted to write. So what to do? At that particular moment, I remembered an incident that happened maybe a year ago, of an idea that struck me in the same situation, but I said, it's okay, let's wait, and when I get back home, I'll write it. Unfortunately, I lost that idea, and it never came to me. So that's why, even though all traffic lights were green, I just pulled over, and I had only a pen. I remember that I wanted to write it as quickly as I can, I mean, the idea. So my bag was in the back seat. I actually could not wait any longer. I had the pen beside me, and my hand, I just pulled this like this, and I started writing on my body. Yeah. And another thing that I did, but I'm not going to show you my leg right now. Okay, I did this, and I started to write. Yeah. So this is the relationship I have with my body. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I usually like to inspect my body every now and then in front of a mirror. I actually do that. So whenever something new that just takes place in my body, I just welcome that, as if I'm trying to embrace my body after that very long period or experience that I had. It was really a bad experience related to my body when I was young, really a child, because back then, I hated my body. I even used to tell my mom, I no longer want to be a girl. I want to change. I just want to sleep and then wake up one day and become a boy. All right, to that extent. So it took me really a very long time to try to transform, try to love my body as well. And I actually admit that. I went through therapy, and also writing, of course, helped me a lot through that. Thank you.
I love the
contrast between Usman rolling up his sleeves to fight and Haifa in front of the mirror. It also brings to mind the American poet Charlie Simic said that his father would have been a poet except for the fact, if not for the fact that all of his best ideas came to him when he was in the bathtub and didn't want to get out of it. Anyone else want to talk about it?
If I want to write, I need to destroy my body. I'm tired, and it's a very good start for me when I'm tired. And yeah.
In my case, I have conscience of my body all day because when I want to make a note, I know that I can write in a paper quickly. I need my telephone to record maybe the thing. When I stand in my room to write, I need that the desk is prepared to make comfortable the space to write. Every day I have conscience about my body, my movements, the way I take the paper, the pencil, and I believe that these ways to make things goes to the writers. That's because my writing are with small phrases, small paragraphs, concise, like a poetry. That's why I write poetry.
Yeah, just one thing, why I always use like these cuffs. At times you have terrible quarrels with your own characters. As one Spinter said, that character wants to go into direction A, but a writer wants to take that character into direction B. So there is a quarrel. So what happens is you talk to a character, you take him to a pub, you drink together, you make it up, so that character may listen to you. So it is very much an engagement with the characters also.
What a dizzying trip around the world we have just had. I think before we close, I just want to draw your attention to, on the back, in addition to some more pizza, there's a sheet here with all of the upcoming events for the fall residency. Please give a warm round of applause for our wonderful writers.